Good evening. Negotiations over redundancies at Alliance Textiles Woolen mills at Milton have just broken down. Union and management met for 4 hours this afternoon, but a short time ago, both sides emerged without any agreement and no immediate plans for further talks. Mark Price reports.
The union says about 46 jobs are on the line at the Milton mill, which employs about 136 at present. But it says the number of jobs to go hinges on the size of the redundancy agreement, and that was the sticking point at the talks today in Weazel.
The dearer the redundancy, the less the number of people may be put off. And the most inexpensive redundancy deal, then there's a potential for greater numbers to be laid off.
The scale of redundancies that the union are asking for are 12 weeks pay, in lieu of 12 weeks pay plus 2 weeks for every year of service. And we feel that in today's economic circumstances, companies are not in the position to continue with these types of payment, and many other companies are in the same position.
We put a counter proposal to the company which we believe addressed their immediate needs, and also for the longer term it should turn the company round.
Alliance is owned by Renouf Corporation and owns mills at Milton, Weazel, Oamaru and Timaru. The union says there's no reason to believe the redundancies will be confined to Milton.
The government's about to announce a $250,000 grant for the improvement of visitor amenities at Milford Sound. The grant comes from the Minister of Tourism under the Community and Public Sector Grant Scheme. The $250,000 will go towards a more detailed design of these plans agreed on by the parties involved in the redevelopment. The money will also cover the cost of seeking the many approvals necessary for the development to go ahead. It's hoped the designs will be ready by October. Still, with tourist developments, this model gives an idea what the big new international hotel planned for Dunedin will look like. The Dunedin City Council is hoping to wrap up its negotiations for the hotel by the end of the month. Chief Executive Merv Montague says the council's deep and sensitive negotiations on finance that need to be settled before the hotel can get the green light. The main points of the government's new economic package hit home in the south today. Despite the finance minister's promise of a strong future for the country, the region has many areas of concern, among them manufacturing, unemployment and farming. The package offers nothing to local manufacturers, according to their association. In the past 5 months, a third of the Otago Southland manufacturers' members have been forced out of business. And as far as the association can see, the future doesn't look any brighter. Kathy Graham with this report.
A few months ago, the machinists at this Dunedin factory very nearly lost their jobs. Their employers, Odenberg Industries, went into receivership, the same fate many businesses in the south have suffered. But they count themselves lucky. The receiver decided to continue trading. 95% of the garments produced here are exported to the States, a fact which undoubtedly contributed to the company's troubles.
A combination of an adverse exchange rate and exceedingly high interest rates suddenly made the business unprofitable, whereas it had been profitable in the past.
As manufacturers point out, it's been a lethal combination for export manufacturers everywhere. And although yesterday's budget may prevent a blowout, it's done little for them.
Is there anything in there for manufacturers?
No, and the company tax is not going to help manufacturers either. The GST, of course, the manufacturers have been pushing for some time to increase the GST to such an extent that they would actually lower the remaining taxes. But the increase in company tax could possibly mean further unemployment as well.
But although Joy Leslie sees at least another 2 hard years ahead for manufacturers, her own company's facing up to that and continuing to stay profitable, she says, by always looking for efficiencies. After 40 years in business, Wycliffe Press is well established.
We've got a very sound domestic base. We did export a few years ago and had quite substantial exports going into Australia, but at the same time we never let go of our domestic base.
I think 95% of Odenberg business is export. Is that a mistake looking back on it?
Yes, it probably was. I think one has to diversify. We are looking at increasing our presence within the domestic market. We believe there is a New Zealand market for the product. We're looking toward Australia and we're looking toward Japan.
For Odenbergs, at least there's a second chance. And for these workers, still a pay packet to take home.
Also concerned about the government's package are the region's rising number of unemployed. As welfare checks remain the same, the cost of living increases.
Compared with figures for this time last year, unemployment has risen. Alexandra has gone from 393 unemployed to 697. Dunedin from 4,438 to 7,474. Oamaru from 726 to 907. Invercargill from 2,361 to 3,163. And Gore from 421 to 511. Last year, 7.9% of Dunedin's labour force was unemployed. This year, 12.86% are out of work. In Invercargill and Gore, 6.9% of workers were unemployed. This year, that has risen to 8.72%. Dunedin's Employment Resource Coordinator says the budget will mean fewer jobs, as the increase in company tax forces businesses to cut back in other areas.
People are looking at the wider issues, and the wider issues being that it's getting more and more expensive to keep your business afloat.
Last night's package doesn't include any reduction to benefits, but neither will they increase in line with the Consumer Price Index. And it's that's upsetting the unemployed.
In Southland, the rural dynamo of the community is farming. It's finally starting to climb out of the 5 years of depression weathered by most farmers. Cash is beginning to flow out of good wool checks and improving lamb prices back into fertiliser. It's one of the first things on the increase. Carriers too are getting a cut. To fill this truck with fertiliser will cost the farmer $7,000. But the general feeling is that the economic changes won't help those serving the industry.
Is there much in it for anybody?
Well, do you think there'll be any sort of kickbacks for you as a carrier?
Well, they've given, on one hand, they've given us a bit of reduction in fuel, and then they've taken us on the rest of it, so I don't think it's going to help us in any way at all. Not really.
And the recurring thought about fuel cost is the first reaction of Graham Spain, branch chairman of Federated Farmers.
I don't think there's a great deal in it for me, or any other farmer really, because if you take the comments that have been made on fuel so far, by the time another 3 or 4 months have gone by, diesel and petrol could be higher than they've ever been. Certainly back to where they were possibly 2 years ago.
Many farming have been forced to get off farm work to stay ahead of the mortgagors, whether it be another farm service job or something completely different. But their reactions are similar.
Well, I simply think it's not going to help farmers, simply because it's not going to bring interest rates down, and that is the thing that's killing farmers.
A musician who left New Zealand for the United States 20 years ago is back, supporting one of America's top country singers. Richard Taiaroa, known as Weazel, toured Australia in the 60s with the Chevronnaires and joined the High Quins in Surfers Paradise. Now he's part of the New Zealand show band backing Charlie Pride. George Burke found him performing at the university.
Weazel was one of the successful Quintikis who toured the US in 1970. The group was so popular it stayed in Las Vegas for about 7 years. Then it broke up and Weazel went it alone in 1987. Contracted exclusively to a luxury hotel in New Mexico where he now lives. He's a one-man band, computers driving his backing.
It's fully computerized, controlled from 2 different sources up here, and either one. And so it's fairly easy. It's real easy to go in there and change an arrangement or something by just calling them up and just changing the numbers. Make them different.
Weazel heads north to Oamaru for Easter, then tours with Charlie Pride before going home to New Mexico.
now to the 3 o'clock temperatures. Half Moon Bay was overcast with 14, Invercargill cloudy and 14. The high tomorrow is 19 degrees. Gore, a high cloud and 15, Balclutha overcast and 14, Dunedin overcast 14, a high of 19 tomorrow. Palmerston overcast 15, Oamaru 14 degrees, cloudy in Ranfurly with 14, Lumsden also recorded 14 at 3 o'clock, Queenstown had rain and 15 degrees, Alexandra cloudy and 17 the high today, and Taiaroa was overcast and 14 degrees. We'll be back tomorrow night. Good night.